After talking about Neptune and the 8th house in the previous video, let's stay with this topic a little bit longer because there is more there to explain. Jupiter is the other ruler of that house. Jupiter and Neptune are both associated with Pisces. Jupiter, the ancient ruler, in my mind, the primary ruler. Neptune, the modern and secondary ruler. And when you assess what these planets mean, they explain Trump's life and circumstances in a really poetic way. Poetic and at the same time very accurate. Remember what I said in prior videos. These two in this house explain his hyperbolic, exaggerated, often inappropriately expanded way of communicating, as well as the full-on dishonesty, which would be the Neptune. But then Jupiter and Neptune connect to the 8th by rulership. And so then you see that that's the house of inheritance. All his money is inherited from his father. And any other money he has managed to put together is really other people's money. I think one of the fears that he has is that if his paperwork is exposed by way of loans and taxes and this kind of thing, it'll be revealed that he has a lot less money than he says he has, and that in any case it's all basically debt that he's managed to secure. And of course, that tells you that these two planets are very powerful. Not everybody can walk into a bank and get a loan for hundreds of millions. Of course, this is also the house of names and naming, so he basically has marketed his name his whole life. That's really it. He licenses his name. He really doesn't do anything. Sells his name and he brands things. Notice that, for example, one of the inappropriate things he does is hurl insults at people through naming them, Sleepy Joe, Low Energy Joe, Low Energy Jeb. Some name that he assigns. House of naming, right? Two planets once again in play. But they connect to the 8th. And the 8th puts the situation in great peril because that house overall is not a positive house. Yes, it can be turned into a positive power. He has done that to some extent. But now, because of Neptune going through there, it's in great peril. But look at Jupiter also. Jupiter comes from here. Where is it transiting now? It's transiting over here with these other two, Saturn and Pluto, opposite Saturn and Venus. So if we look at the ephemeris, during this period, 2020, Jupiter transits the whole year and during the election period. So now Jupiter, a planet that at birth is a tremendous asset, becomes a liability in this case. Yes, this planet is incredibly powerful. It's not only in its station, and I mean really, really close to the exact station within hours. By the way, as an aside, any person with a stationary Jupiter is granted a very large measure of luck and privilege in any lifetime. And this guy certainly has it. Right? However, station is great, the trine to the sun is fantastic, sextile the moon, but there are squares in this direction. At 17, it doesn't look like it's squaring anything in here, but you can count the one to Saturn for sure, and also using the rough midpoint of the sign, you can argue that this planet, Jupiter, is actually squaring everything. If you take these planets all together, it's something that I do often and works really well, Jupiter actually squares in this direction, which is why it's such an excessive planet. Right? Whenever you want to see Jupiter going overboard, put it in square or opposition to things, and that's what happens. So now, in the period that we're in, it becomes a major liability, and it leads to misfortune, and it leads to mistakes in action. I mean, as I said in the prior video, when you look at what has happened in 2020, he has definitely misused his Jupiter to craft a totally inappropriate, excessive message around a topic that really shouldn't be spoken about in this way. And I think it's going to damage him. And I think it's going to be another factor that conspires to sink him in 2020. And given the tremendous confluence of other factors that are against him, Jupiter would be one that he would really need, and he doesn't have it. Now, remember, I'll close by saying that Jupiter in 2016 was over here in Virgo. Now, contrast that trine. You see, this trine to Virgo, it comes from Capricorn. But because it opposes Venus, the trine to the MC by Jupiter becomes complicated through the opposition to Venus. Now, of course, yes, Saturn and Pluto are there too, so that adds to it. But if you take this line and you make the trine from here, then you don't get that problem, because from here, it actually sextiles Venus and Saturn. So it's a powerful trine without problems. Over here, it's not as good a trine, right? In 2016, 2015, 2016, Jupiter was trining and there was no problem. It became a big asset by trining his midheaven. But not now, not in 2020.